In 1870, a man named John D. Rockefeller owned one oil refinery in Cleveland, Ohio. Just one. By 1880, 10 years later, he controlled 90% of all oil refining in the United States. Not 30%, not 60%, 90%. Every barrel of oil drilled in Pennsylvania, every pipeline moving crude from the ground to a tank, every rail car carrying refined kerosene to a lamp in someone's home, John D. Rockefeller had his hand somewhere on the chain. How did he do it? The charitable interpretation is he was extremely good at running oil refineries. He drove costs down, he negotiated hard, he reinvested profits, he scaled. The less charitable interpretation, the one that the United States government eventually put in its 12,000-page legal filing, is that he made secret deals with the railroads to charge his competitors higher freight rates than his own company paid. He bought out rivals who didn't know they were being bought out until it was too late. He created holding companies inside holding companies so nobody could tell who owned what. The government called this an unreasonable restraint of trade. Rockefeller called it efficient. Both of them were, in a sense, correct. In 1906, the US Department of Justice finally sued. The case took 5 years. In 1911, the Supreme Court ruled unanimously that Standard Oil had to be broken into 34 separate companies. It was the largest corporate breakup in the history of the United States, and everyone agreed it would never happen again. Here's the interesting thing about what happened after Standard Oil was broken up. The 34 companies it was split into, many of them became extraordinarily successful. Standard Oil of New Jersey became ExxonMobil. Standard Oil of New York became Mobil, then also ExxonMobil. Standard Oil of Indiana became Amoco. Standard Oil of California became Chevron. In other words, the government broke up Standard Oil and Standard Oil won anyway. The breakup didn't destroy the empire, it just redistributed it into smaller empires, owned by many of the same people. John D. Rockefeller himself, by some accounts, became wealthier after the breakup than before it, because the value of the 34 new company shares he now held exceeded the value of the single conglomerate. The lesson that the government, the courts, the economic historians broadly agree on is this: when a company becomes powerful enough that it can only be stopped by the Supreme Court of the United States acting unanimously, you have waited too long. Keep that in mind, because on the 27th of April 2026, 115 years after the Standard Oil ruling, two men walked into a federal courthouse in Oakland, California. And one of them was wearing considerably more expensive shoes than in 1911. I'm Abhinav Krishna Kaiser. This is It Was Always Going to Happen, the show where history didn't repeat itself, it just used a different API. The two men in Oakland were Elon Musk and Sam Altman. Musk, who co-founded OpenAI in 2015 with a $38 million donation, is suing OpenAI for up to $134 billion in damages. Altman, who runs OpenAI, showed up at the courthouse on the first day, sat in the gallery, and watched his co-founder testify that donating to the company was the single biggest mistake of his career. The charge? That Altman and the other founders of OpenAI took a company that was created as a non-profit, created explicitly and in writing to benefit all of humanity, and quietly turned it into one of the most valuable for profit companies in the world without asking. To understand what's actually being argued in that Oakland courtroom, you need to understand what OpenAI was supposed to be. In 2015, Musk, Altman, Greg Brockman, and a small group of researchers founded OpenAI as a non profit research lab. The founding document said, and this is important, that its goal was to ensure that artificial general intelligence benefits all of humanity, not shareholders, not investors, all of humanity. Musk put in $38 million. Other donors contributed more. And the explicit promise, according to Musk, was that the money would never be used to enrich private individuals. By 2019, OpenAI had created a capped profit arm, a structure that allowed private investment, but capped returns at 100 times the investment, which sounds like a meaningful limit until you consider that Microsoft invested $1 billion in 2019, and OpenAI is now valued at $852 billion. 100 times $1 billion is $100 billion. That is a meaningful return by most definitions. By 2024, OpenAI had begun the process of converting fully to a for profit company. In 2025, that conversion was completed. And in 2024, before the conversion was finished, Musk sued. His argument is straightforward. He gave money to a charity. That charity promised to stay a charity. It stopped being a charity. He wants his money back with interest, specifically $134 billion worth of interest. OpenAI's counter argument is equally straightforward. Musk left the board in 2018. He subsequently tried to take control of the company. He failed and then went off and built his own competing AI company called XAI, which he since merged with SpaceX into a 1.25 trillion entity. In other words, this is not about principle, this is about competition. Both of those things can be true simultaneously. The trial began April 27th. Musk testified for 3 days. And look, I want to be fair to Elon Musk here. When he took the stand, he described himself at length and with apparent sincerity as someone who has always been motivated by the fear that artificial intelligence could destroy humanity. He testified about a dinner with Google co-founder Larry Page years ago, where he warned Page that AI was an existential threat to the human race. Page, according to Musk, called him a speciesist for being pro humanity. That is a remarkable thing to be called, if you look at it, and it apparently stuck with Musk because his argument in court is essentially I gave money to prevent AI from destroying humanity, and instead, the people I gave it to used it to build the world's most powerful AI company and sold it to Microsoft, which is not obviously wrong as a description of events. Altman's lawyers, meanwhile, told the jury that Musk demanded control of OpenAI, that he tried to install himself as CEO, threatened to cut off funding when he didn't get it, and when he finally left the board, started building a competitor. The implication being, this lawsuit is not a man defending a principle. This is a man who tried to win a game, lost the game, and is now disputing the rules. Microsoft's lawyer separately cross examined Musk. Microsoft, the company that invested $1 billion in the non-profit and is now sitting on what might be the most valuable corporate investment in history, got to question the man suing his own company. You cannot write this. Here is where Standard Oil comes back into the story. When the Supreme Court broke up Standard Oil in 1911, the concern wasn't just that one company had too much power over oil. The deeper concern was about what happens to a democracy when a single private entity controls infrastructure that everyone depends on. In 1911, that infrastructure was oil, the thing that heated your home, lit your lamps, ran your engines. In 2026, it is artificial intelligence. OpenAI's models power products used by 900 million people every week. Microsoft, its largest shareholder, has integrated those models into Windows, into Office, and Azure, the software that runs most of the world's companies. Altman has described his goal as building artificial general intelligence, a system smarter than any human across every domain. And the question being argued in an Oakland courtroom right now, beneath all the personal drama, beneath the $134 billion number, beneath the very entertaining spectacle of two billionaires testifying about their feelings, is a version of the same question the Supreme Court answered in 1911. Who gets to decide what the most powerful technology in the world is for? In 1911, nine Supreme Court justices decided. In 2026, it's 12 jurors in California. And one of the parties asking them to decide owns a rocket company, a car company, a satellite internet company, a social media platform, and a competing AI company. Rockefeller, to his credit, only did oil. On the morning of May 18th, 2026, the jury started deliberating at 8:30 a.m. At 10:23 a.m., 1 hour and 53 minutes later, Judge Yvonne Gonzalez walked back into the courtroom. We have a verdict, the nine-member jury had found unanimously that Elon Musk had waited too long to file his lawsuit. Not that his claims were wrong, not that OpenAI had acted properly, not that Sam Altman was innocent of anything, just that the 3 year statute of limitations had expired before Musk pulled the trigger on his lawsuit in 2024. The court never even had to decide whether he was right. Musk attorney Mark Toberoff immediately said they would appeal to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Musk himself called it a calendar technicality, which is technically true. It is a calendar technicality. The same way Cinderella losing her carriage at midnight was a calendar technicality. The clock ran out, the spell broke, the lawsuit is over for now. Here is what the verdict actually means in practical terms. OpenAI's for profit structure stands. Its conversion from non-profit to for-profit is legally unchallenged, at least by Musk, at least in this court. The IPO, which is already planned for later this year, has one fewer cloud hanging over it. Sam Altman walked out of that courthouse as the undisputed CEO of an $852 billion company with a clear legal runway. Elon Musk walked out as a man who will spend the next several years filing appeals. And the 900 million people who use OpenAI's products every week, they didn't even notice. The models kept running, the products kept working, the world kept moving. Which brings us back one final time to Standard Oil. Because here is the thing the verdict proved, the thing that every major tech antitrust case for the last 30 years has proved. The law moves at the speed of institutions, technology moves at the speed of ambition. And by the time the courthouse catches up with the product has already become the infrastructure. Here is what I want to leave you with. In 1911, when Standard Oil was broken up, Rockefeller was 61 years old. He had already won. The breakup came too late to matter, and as I mentioned, he got richer from it anyway. Sam Altman is 40 years old. OpenAI is 10 years old. That trial lasted for 3 weeks. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. And in that 2 hours, they decided, without ruling on the merits, without asking whether OpenAI's founding mission was betrayed, without ever reaching the actual question, that the answer was simply not our problem because somebody filed a piece of paper too late. Whether Musk was right or wrong about OpenAI, and I genuinely think both things are true simultaneously, the outcome is the same. The company is intact, the power is concentrated, the technology is deployed. It was always going to happen. If this made you think, share it with someone who needs to. And if you want to argue about whether Musk had a point, the comments are open. I read them. I'll see you next week.